Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me again on the Flying Goat Farm podcast. Let's get to it. So, here's what's happening on the farm. It is the second week of May and 2021, and the grass is growing really high. If you are watching this on YouTube, then you can see I have a picture up here of our Angora goats in one of our small pastures, and you can barely see them. The grass is so high. It's I want to say it's maybe 24 inches high. Of course, they think that they want to have grain all the time, but every time I go out to feed them, I'm not feeding them. I'm telling them, you are grass eaters. Go eat the grass. And so there they are eating the grass. And so the lilacs are also blooming. We're getting things into the ground. I don't know if I had said this before, but Bill he took a hydroponics class in the wintertime. And so he started these amazing tomatoes that look like they should be in a garden center being sold for like $20 each. They're gigantic. They have lots of blossoms on them already. And he's so excited about it. He's making more and more. I think we're probably going to be inundated with tomatoes, but that's okay because the last couple of years it's been a bad tomato year. Typically, what we like to do with our tomatoes is that we make them into a puree, and then some of it we will cook down almost to a paste. And that's what we call it, almost paste. It's not quite as thick as what you would have in a can, but it's also just the right enough amount of thickening to make great spaghetti sauce, great marinara. We also make salsa. And, Bill's been really sad the past couple of years because we have had to really ration the salsa because there just haven't been enough tomatoes. Last year, we had to go and buy tomatoes from our local farm stores. So hopefully we won't have to do that this year. One of our friends, Carol, who runs a CSA, she gave us a whole bunch of rhubarb roots, and I have never been successful in growing rhubarb. She told me the secret, so I'm going to pass it on to you. And I never knew this before. I tried to plant rhubarb in a bunch of different places around the farm, next to the house, so it doesn't get too cold in the winter, out by the asparagus. So it needs to be in full sun. And the most important trick, though, is it doesn't like to have a change in the depth that it's planted. So you need to, like with these roots that she gave us, we need to plant them at the same level as they were when she took them out. So I'm hoping that Bill knows how to do that, but I think that's on his list to do today, this afternoon, is to get those rhubarb roots in the ground. So I don't know if we'll get rhubarb this year. It might kind of be like asparagus where you don't eat it the first year. I'm not sure. I'll have to look that part up. Or if any of you guys know anything about rhubarb and you want to let me know, just shoot me an email or put a comment on this podcast. So today is part 4 of Color Explorer. And I'm going to recap what we have done so far. So hopefully you've made that Pinterest board that I asked you to make, or if this is the first one that you're listening to right now. I think it's great to build your color confidence and to explore your color sense is to build a Pinterest board that is for color inspiration. Now, don't put any yarn in there. I'm not talking about putting pictures of yarn in there. I'm talking about putting in pictures that you find on Pinterest that are exciting to you or that you love. It could be a seascape. It could be some great still life with different fruits and vegetables. It could be pictures of the stars or close-up pictures of flowers. Put in those kind of pictures because those kind of pictures are going to give you the most information about what you like as a person, what your color sense is. And what I've talked about this whole season, this whole part is finding, building that confidence in yourself. Your best knitting friend's color sense is not the same as yours. So even though that person is going to be great to shop with and it's great to run ideas past them, don't pick what they would pick. You want to pick what is, making your heart go thumpity thump. And one way to figure that out is by, doing some, doing some collecting of these photos and reflecting upon them and looking at them within the different contexts that each of these 4 episodes has shown. So you're going to look at them like, well, is there a certain color family that I really love? Is there a certain color harmony? Are all the pictures that I'm picking, are they all kind of monochrome? Like it's all peach flowers. They're all different flowers. They could be roses and ranunculus and hydrangeas, but they're all in that kind of peachy area, so the more monochromatic. Or am I picking things that are analogous, things that are next to each other on the colorway? Like, am I picking a Caribbean ocean scene, Caribbean sea scene, where I'm going to have some beautiful teals and turquoises and blues? So again, that's almost monochromatic, but it's going towards the analogous. Or am I picking something that's like really like, whoa, it like makes it so vibrational by because I'm picking complementaries, like I'm picking pansies that have yellow and purple in them. And so I'm picking a lot of things that are like that, or I'm picking some of those protea flowers that maybe have green and red on them. So I'm picking a lot of complements. So these are all things that you can reflect upon. We have also visited our collection several times to look and see what you have in your collection. Do you have particular hue families? Do you only have blues or only have purples or only have blues and purples in your collection? And looking at what color harmonies that you can put together by shopping in your own collection. And also, are you missing some colorways that might add some added pop? And so maybe you have already started your wish list for the next fiber festival that we might have. And hopefully it will be in this fall that we'll be able to get back out there. So today we're going to look a little bit closer at more of the different complementary color schemes. So just a recap about the complementary colors, right? So these are colors that are directly across the color wheel from each other. They can be primaries, secondaries, or tertiary colors. They're just directly across. So one of the big ones is, blue-orange colorways or purple-yellow colorways, but it could also be in your secondary. So blue-green is directly across from red-orange. So looking at those kind of color combinations that you might have in your own collection. So this harmony works best when you have big color runs or big pools of color. Just as you can see, if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you want to go back and watch it on YouTube so you can see some of the images that I have, when you have big areas of color, then it works well in this complementary colorway. If there are little spots of color or small color runs, what our eyes tend to do is mix those colors all together. And especially from a distance, your work will look muddy. It will look more like a brown or a gray. Ask me how I know. This is a common beginner's weaver's mistake, and I think I've talked about that in one of the previous episodes. When you have red and green, a lot of new weavers, me included, would want to make something that's Christmas red and green. If you are putting red and green across each other and in weaving, you're going to have there going to be little spots of color that when you look at it from a distance, it's going to look muddy. It's not going to look like a fantastic red and green Christmassy table runner. So one of the ways that you can work to make the complementaries a little bit more harmonious is to do a split complementary. And this just happens when the colors are just a little bit off, okay? So instead of picking a color that is directly across the color wheel, you are going to pick the color that is next to the complement. So going back to yellow, if you're picking yellow, then the split complementary would be blue violet or red violet. And I'm going to go over to the purple because of the images that I have found on the internet shows a violet, and the split complementary is going to be like a yellowy green or an orangey yellow. And you can see that in each of these images that I have here, including what I call Cabernet Harvest roving that I have. That is it's really a red violet. So I have my little color wheel here. So red violet, and it's kind of a yellowy, goldy green, avocado-y color, and that's going to be your split complementary. While there's still excitement, it's a little bit more moderated and it's less uncomfortable. It's less vibrational. A true complement really makes your eyes vibrate, and some people find that very uncomfortable. This harmony can also show a lot of luminosity. So you can see that in the photos that I have here. The next harmony is when you pick 3 colors instead of just 2 colors, and so they're called triads or triadic harmonies, and typically they're equidistant across the color wheel. So you put in, an equilateral triangle, just to be a little bit more schoolish about it. What this tends to be is it's going to be, like red, yellow, blue, the primaries are tetratic harmonies, and so is green, orange, violet. But if I change it and I say, okay, I want to do red, violet, then I could be red, violet, blue, green, and yellow, orange. So that is, so like a gold color, a blue, green, and a red, violet is beautiful together. And these can be a little bit tricky to use in your work. You need to control the amounts of each color to make a pleasing composition. You don't, like the very bright-ish colors, you probably want to tone down a little bit. If I look at, if I look at one of these, I have a picture of some oranges on a green plate. And the plate is kind of a yellowy green. And so the split complement or the triad would be like a red, orange, and a blue violet there. And so you can kind of see the red, orange is in there, and the blue violet is the background of the table. And so it makes it a really pleasing kind of look. There also isn't a huge amount of contrast or value change in that image. If you look at the other painted image, it looks like a plumeria. You have a lot of contrast with that. And with that you have like a yellow orange. You have the blue violet, a really blue violet. And then you have some red oranges in there too. And it makes a striking composition. Again, there's not a huge amount of the really lightest, most intense yellow color, so you're controlling for that. So anytime you get into these complementaries, you want to make sure that you look at how much of each color is in there and look and make sure that they are staying in harmony with each other. Then if you pick 4 colors to go together, you would call those tetratic complements. And typically these are like a square. You're making a square or a rectangle within the color wheel. And what this turns out to be is that it turns out to be 2 pairs of complementary colors. So this could become a very chaotic kind of color harmony because you're doubling the amount of vibration because you're using 2 complements. And the way that you work to correct these is to change the proportions of them and or to change the tint, tone, and shade. So looking at I have an image here that is some cranes. And so you have a difference. You have very pastel, very tinted colors. They're not totally right in your face, and it makes a very pleasing composition. The other painting that I have has all the colors in very, very bright, intense intensities, saturations, and they've taken the one color yellow, which is the most intense and the most saturated, and made it very, very small. They've used it sparingly, so you still get the excitement, especially when it's next to that purple, but it's not as strong as the other colors. The proportion has been changed, so it acts like kind of like a pop of color, and that's what makes it a pleasing kind of composition there. So not only the colors themselves have an effect on the color, obviously, but the texture of the yarn or the textile that you're using has an effect as well. Texture affects how you perceive color because textures are going to do something to the surface of your finished textile or the yarn itself. The smoother that the textile is, the clearer your colors are going to be, because it's smooth and there isn't anything that's breaking the surface. But when you add a nubby texture of like a tweedy kind of yarn, or you add a halo with some fuzzy yarn, like with a cashmere or a mohair yarn added, the colors are going to be broken up. The surface is going to be broken up. So even if there's a long colorway or a large pool of color, it will appear to be more nuanced because that texture is breaking up the surface and causing it to be a little bit more complex. And so that therefore, and it's going to take away a little bit of the bright color. When you use a lustrous yarn, like we had this fabulous, I call it Alto, it's a superwash Blueface luster blended with silk. And it's highly, highly lustrous. It just shines. It looks like, almost looks like a metal when you have it into a fabric. And the shine only enhances the color. Because it's so smooth on the surface, it brings out the color, and that shine also attracts the eye. And you also have yarns that are more matte. For instance, our Cormo yarn is more matte. It's a lot more crimpy. It's a lot more, the fibers are shorter, so it appears matte. So even when you have 2 yarns that are the same hue, the same value, the same everything, and you have one that's lustrous and you have one that's a matte, your yarn that's a matte will appear a little bit more dull in relation to the lustrous one. So again, it's now time to look at your Pinterest board again. What photos did you choose? Can now look at this and reflect upon your boards and learn from your boards what you have picked. Can you identify the different complementary color schemes in the photos that you picked? What can you tell about yourself from your Pinterest board? Are you someone who loves split complementaries like I do? Or are you someone who likes way more exciting color schemes and maybe, a complementary colorway, or maybe one who likes a whole lot less, like maybe all your pictures are in the monochromatic or analogous colorways. The photo that I've chosen here is a split complementary. You've got the blue greens and greens, the blue greens, yellow greens. You've got a little bit of red violet and red orange. And I love colors of rust. I know I've talked about that before when we talked about these Pinterest boards. But this is part of building your color sense. This is part of building your color confidence. And that is going back and looking at what you picked. What does that say about you? What can you know about yourself now that you didn't know about yourself before in relation to color? So now that you have the tools that you can identify the colors that work together in your collection, you can identify the different kinds of color harmonies, and you've begun to build your color confidence. You have reflected on your fiber choices and your photo preferences by looking at your Pinterest board and visiting your collection. And now you've explored the colors and found out what you prefer. And remember, it may not be what your best knitting friend prefers. It's individual. But now you can own it for yourself, and you can start selecting colorways intentionally and not depending on other people to pick them for you. Of course, it's okay to still need help. It's okay to still ask for help. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying knowing what you like is going to help you in the long run make garments and items that you really love and that you're going to love to wear. So it's time to start auditioning your collection, putting things together. And I wanted to let you know, this is how I go about picking my curated shawl triads. So first of all, I take my most loud skein, and that's usually going to be a variegated skein. So that's going to be the one that I'm working off of. And then I pick a color from that. It could be the color that is most prominent, or it could be a color that maybe isn't so prominent, but is one that I truly like and that I want to have more of in my garment. So after you pick that color, now you find a skein in that color that you want and put it together. And this may take a few tries, and that's why I'm calling it auditioning your collection. If you say, my variegated colorway has pink and orange and green in it, and a lot of white background. And so I know that I really like pink. So then I'm going to look at all my other pink yarns that I have, and I'm going to put them together with my variegated. Which one looks better with this? Which one looks better with that? And then I find the two that I'm really going to like. And what I would say is, especially when you're first starting out, and I just think this is a good design idea anyway, and that is that if you are only going to have one variegated color in your 3 or 4, so your second and third skeins are either going to be spreckly or they're going to be semi-solids in some way, so that you don't have a whole bunch of chaotic colors running together. So now, especially if I'm looking at this first photo that I have, so now I have a variegated, and I have a semi-solid colorway. And then for my third skein, I can either pick another semi-solid, or I can pick a spreckly one. And for this time, I chose a spreckly one that's mostly has the white background that kind of matches the white background of my original skein, and then has a lot more of those fun spreckly colors. And if you look at the other items or the other shawl trios that I have here, they come with a similar set where I've taken, one skein that's variegated, and then one that is semi-solid, and the other one would be either another semi-solid or a spreckly one. Now, remember, you always have to think about the pattern you're going to use too. So remember that the wilder the yarn, the simpler your stitches need to be. So wherever you're going to put that variegated skein of yarn, it should be a pretty simple, stockinette or garter, or maybe a seed stitch. But it should be a place where you're letting that yarn do all the work for you. And then in the places where there might be a more mesh or more lace or something like that, put in your semi-solid there, or put in your spreckles there, because then the stitch is doing the work and the yarn is being less wild. So I think if you follow those kinds of ideas, then you're going to be able to find some great skeins in your collection to put together, or you're going to be able to see, oh, these two look really great, but I need another one that's like this. And then you can add that to your wish list. So here's what you're going to do next. Right now, this short series is over, but your exploration is not. So I urge you to take out your collection again and to do this auditioning. It's so much fun. Find sets of 3 to 4 skeins that will work together for, a spectacular Stephen West shawl, or Andrea Maui faded sweater, or a shawl there too. And as always, I would really, really love to hear about your journey. My intention here in this 4-part series on color exploration was to help you develop your color sense and your color confidence. And I really want to hear about your journey. You can tell me by emailing me, or you can tag me in a photo on social media with your skein sets. And remember, if you'd like to be featured in the podcast talking about your journey, having a conversation about me, or not about me, having a conversation with me, you can reach out to me. Let's share the love of color and the love of our collections, and that would be really fun. And for right now, the podcast will be on a small hiatus, and we'll be back in a month or so with our next season of the Flying Goat Farm podcast. And until we see you again in person or virtually, or here on the podcast, or on YouTube, or on Facebook Live, or any of the other ways that you can get a hold of me, happy making.